do this learning in his honor.
Yeah.
And when we talk about like people passing, I think it's very much just physical, because we're still alive with him, still stimulating your new heart, still bringing life force and life source to your life. But we are now the vehicle for action. So our bodies are constantly in a state of action and growth, and our souls don't really need growth. Are one with harmony, one with unity, one with energy. So your souls are not really looking for growth. In fact, they weren't really up for this journey in the first place. They're like, I'm good. I'm floating around the galaxies in full harmony and unity. But our bodies, on the other hand, are incredible organisms of growth. So why does the body need to decay? Why does it need to grow old? Why does it need to die? Even if we get into the spiritual psychosis of it's not really dead, it's part of life and part of this world. But there's loss, and there's sickness, and we need healing. So Silicon Valley's trying to work on it, first and foremost, working on different compounds and different worries. But that's just really human beings, when they have time to work with health, they do amazing things. The health gene went down for a long time. People's age, kept going lower for a long time. But historically, there were many ages where people lived very long, beautiful lives. And just you asking, like, what does it mean, Admei Esrim, to be to 120? What is Judaism's fascination with living this whole life, a long life, getting old? What does that represent? One of the reasons I said yes was, I can't tell you how many people have told me they don't want to grow old. They look at it and they're like, I just want to expire at some point having a good time. Like, they just value like some type of external joy as to be the final chapter and just set off into the sunset. So I think Judaism is trying to inspire us to think of age in another lens, and to find a virtue for the age that we grow into, the way our bodies grow into it. So like, instead of just looking at like, how do I stay healthy and live to 120? I mean, I don't want to focus tonight on anything you could find on Google. Like what you could research about health. But
that's exactly why I want to like dig into the things that we know in the Torah, like something that, for instance, we know about Moshe, which is like, he said he lived until 120 and he was in full force. That's something that is very interesting to me. Or also, a few years ago, I heard that it was, I don't know where exactly it is in the text, but apparently people would just like sneeze and pass away. And it was very confusing for people. They wouldn't have any signs that would tell them they were about to pass away. And so maybe, and I heard maybe aging came in.
Well, when you look in Torah and you look at like the historical narrative, you know it. And when you look in Torah, you see that there's this like stage of when all of a sudden age and sickness are introduced.
Yes.
Like it's foreign to the human concept, and then all of a sudden it shows up.
Yes.
Think about that in your own life, right? You're like healthy and young and things work, and then all of a sudden introduced to your life, somebody passes away, there's a health thing, and it derails the activity. So there's something about like,
and we feel it a lot, our generation.
Our generation is like petrified of that.
Yeah.
But I think there's something hidden in that, something special in that, of like that we're consciously aware that there's something larger that we're after. What are we living for? So I'll take you back to the first person that got old in the Torah.
Okay.
The first person that got old. Abraham and Sarah are the first couple that became old. There was no concept of old in the Torah. So some look at it like, yes, the Torah in a black and white way is saying that up until that point, no one was old. It wasn't such a thing. You had a certain amount of years. I found that itself interesting biologically. They proved in the last couple of decades that entropy, decay, doesn't happen really as you think it does. People are like, oh, you get older and your body starts decaying. In reality, things don't decay in an open environment. Only in a closed environment. So the first thing that I'm tuning into is like people in closed environments, when we close ourselves off to life, that's really the first conversation here, is about health and life, is not closing yourself to health and life. And there was a certain ability to not have to have that discussion for a long time. Maybe they were having survival of the fittest. Maybe they were playing the card of destiny, whatever my life is, that's the way it should be. But at some point, Abraham shows up with his wife, and they're preaching a way of life that is like, every day you have to find out what the message is for who you are and what you are, and kind of tap into it. Now, some of this is going to sound a little idealistic, because like, are we really capable of hitting every note of Abraham and Sarah? But, which we're going to talk about in just a second. But I think like there should be some idealism with your health. It shouldn't just be, I want to be healthy. And then the answer is because I want to look good or I want to feel good. Like, if you start removing the external realities on health, what are you really into health for? What does health feel like?
And I think when you were talking that, I don't know, my mind went to Japan. Because this is one of the countries that has the longest, like people live the longest. And this is also where they introduced the concept of ikigai, where you find fulfillment in your life. Maybe that's also what is bringing you longevity, because you're here to do something. And so that, yeah, then you get more years because you have work to do.
I look at my own ancestors who all had very challenging lives, going through wars and going through incredible hardship to get to America, and what food did they have, and somehow they all lived really long lives. I look around at my genes and I'm like, wow, I'm really fortunate. All my grandparents lived into their 90s. Like, it's pretty remarkable. Like, what did they do? What was their secret? What was their health practice? And you know, and it's limited, to say the least, to draw on that information. So when I go back to like the Abraham Sarah thing, in the Torah it says that Abraham was old and lived full in his days.
Yeah.
And this idea of him being old was very unique, because that concept of old didn't exist in the Torah. What was old? So they say things like, well, he had a white beard. No one had white before. You know, there was like a new thing. He looked old. No one had looked old. They just looked. So that informs me that there is a belief in Jewish tradition that the body has self-regenerating capacities to have a youthful spirit well into your old age. Like well into any age you can factor in. Maybe it's our imagination that loses touch and thinks at a certain point it's over. But in reality, there's a self-rejuvenating ability within literally our cells are moving, you know, rejuvenating, they're getting energy. Like, what's pulsating you at the smallest atom?
I feel we hear about our matriarch. Often we would see like, she looked like a young bride again, like in her days.
So here's Abraham and Sarah, looking young, but also being called old. So the idea here is that Zaken and Baba Yamim, these Torah words, are saying that they were people, when you saw them, you felt like they were actually alive. That everything that they did was filled with their aliveness. They were not living a life that they had to check boxes. And that's the first thing I would say about like Ad Mea Ve'esr. These words are a blessing that Jews have been given for thousands of years. You should live to 120. Moses lived to 120. The Torah says that 120 is a full life. And look at Ad. Ad means eternity. The word itself could be translated as eternity. Like every day could feel like an eternity of long life and fulfillment. It's a lot of work, right? You need embodiment, you need external connection. Like, what does it take to actually have a great day like that? Sometimes I'm like, is it even possible? Forget eat right and exercise right, love people genuinely, live authentically. Those are hard days to come by. How many of those days do we have? We're thinking about 120 years. Let's talk about a day.
Yeah.
Let's get a full day. And it's saying, what was Abraham and Sarah's quality that every day was a full day? Like, it was a max out day where everything was in sync and harmonized, and they started with intention and ended with integration, had gratitude practices, and it was all interconnected. And there were times they had money and times they didn't, and times they had children and times they didn't, and that was not the factor of them living full days. So it's like we gotta let go of some of these expectations to live a longer life. And what is a longer life in this context is longer days. We're afraid of the concept. Tell somebody, I hope you have a long day. Right? There was a Hasidic master, the first Chabad master, he had a disciple named Rabbi Gilles. Gilles did a favor for him, and he was just so enamored with the favor. He's like, I want to bless you with wealth. And he's like, meh. He's like, okay, I'll bless you with long life. And he said, caveat, as long as they're not boring.
Wow.
And like, wait, what? Like, you take your blessings. Count your blessings, you're told, you know? And for this guy, I was like, no. I want a long life, but I want it to be with the vitality that I feel today. The vitality that you recognize, that you're inspired by, and you want to bless me with the reciprocity of blessing for that vitality. That's what I'm looking for every day. I want that every day. So let's go to our matriarchs a little bit for a second over here. Abraham and Sarah were focused on an equilibrium that they were trying to give to the world, right? It wasn't like they were holding on to something and they were like, it's just for me and it's just for our life. They were in deep reciprocity with all of their actions. And we have today a lot of fear around reciprocity. I do, certainly. It's complicated. It's much easier to give for me than to receive. Some people it's much easier to receive than to give. But there is a cyclical world that you're living in that requires this effort for there to be balance. Whatever you're good at, there's going to be a lot of things you're not. And those things are just as teacher and informative to who you are than anything else, especially in health. Especially in health. There are people in great shape, and yet somehow they're missing part of the health that they need. They're great runners, and they die of a heart attack. Somebody seems very healthy, and somehow, so what's missing is this like larger cycle of connection to the bigger picture of vitality and aliveness. And that's what I think when we talk about Moses and Ad Me'av Esrim, the first word of Ad Me'av Esrim, Ad is eternity. You find eternity in the day. You find a secret to this incredible elongation of your day where you see the space for all the things that you need. Perhaps that'll also show you what things you don't need that are taking up so much time. But Mea, which means 100, I was staring at that word yesterday, and I'm like, Mea, it's an aleph in the middle of the word ma. And ma is the question, what? Like, what's this all about? Like, somebody gets to 100 now, and they're just like, I'm done. You think about being 100 now, and you're like, I don't want to be in a wheelchair, you know? But there's a certain, like, in the question, we insert the aleph. We insert this spark that's designed to both grow in the ground, where no one sees it, in the womb, in the feminine, and also spark out in the maximum, in the skies, in the galaxy of, like, what's coming at me. And this masculine and feminine feature of the aleph that comes together is how we answer our questions. And one of the biggest things for health is quieting the worry and the neuroses of what's going to happen. We're living in the future, we're living in the past, but the present is that holistic harmony that we're really looking for in Jewish tradition. Everything is about the present. We are gods of the present. We are not gods of the future. And we certainly have a hard time understanding the past. So we are gods of the present. What do you do with that? I shorten it for myself. It's like my practices are gratitude and keeping my light on. Because I know that gives me a shot every day at reaching all the types of goals I'm looking for. But it's actually, Jewish practices are really all about that as well.
Yes.
All of them. Consumption, food, rituals, intimacy. It's really all that. And that's kind of where we are when we go Ad Me'av Esrim Shana. Shana means time. So we're being asked to have a life of 120 represents being full with this harmony, and that changes time. Time doesn't have an awareness of you. You have to make it aware of you. Time is like, oh, you're here. You're but a passing shadow to time. You say, I want to live a long time. 120 years is not a long time. Time is a little larger than that. So if time doesn't recognize you, like, that's like, today we see a lot on like, you know, they call it the pale blue dot. You know, the earth is in a sunbeam and it's suspended, and it's like, and the Jewish mystics have a meditation for that much farther behind when we thought about it in those terms, where they were like, I am nothing and the world was created for me, right? We're like balancing the art of which part is going to work. Health is not just doing health practices. Health, you could be very healthy and very unhappy. Health is everything. It's the mental equilibrium, it's the soulful equilibrium, it's the body equilibrium. And if we introduce that to health, we change this conversation. Ad Me'av Esrim Shana is not live a long life and hopefully something happens that's interesting. I'm giving myself a lot longer time, so something should break my way. Doesn't sound really great. Ad Me'av Esrim Shana means every day I got to make time aware of me. Because I am using all the spaciousness of time for all of these things. And that's really what I want to talk about. Is like, so what does that look like?
Exactly, that's my question. And I think why I have this question is because we have other areas of our life that are so particularly dictated that we pride ourselves from having this. You talk about intimacy, for instance. We have so many rules when you get engaged with a partner, and then this is all the secrets and the nida and how you belong with your partner and how you commit to each other, and all those rules give us what we pride ourselves of having the least amount of divorce in our community, and there are a lot of number of kids and happy marriages, and we seem to have uncovered keys that give us what we pride ourselves, which is having happy and long marriages. And so when you were like, that's what I wanted to talk about, I was like, yes, me too. Like, can we start like peeling off the concept that we needed to hear from you, which is, yeah, actually, like already living a long day is a lot of pressure. I'm not even making it. Why am I looking at the 120? I should look at just a day. And so I'm like, okay, what keys do we have to be present just one day at a time?
Yeah. I hope we can wish each other to have a long day and come across as a positive thing at some point. But so the Torah actually only twice says something for a blessing for long life. Okay. One is to honor your parents. Check, no, right here. That has nothing to do with them being physically in a body. And the second one is this odd idea of you can't take the eggs from a mother bird, you have to send the bird away first, that you're not doing it in front of the bird's face. And I was tripping on that a little bit, like,
Exactly.
what's going on? Why are these long life things, The shtetl thing would be like, I'm nice to my parents and I sent many birds away, why do I feel sick? Why do I feel sick? Like, it's not working.
Exactly.
I tend to think that honoring one's parents.
Tell us more about the bird. Where does it belong in the text? Where, like, in what context?
Today I walked out of my house and there was a little bird with a broken wing, and I picked it up and I tried to feed it water and like give it a little kumquat because that was what was there, and a little towel to keep it warm. And then I was like, if you're here when I get back from my day, I'll bring you in. But
And by the way, the bird was well enough to go on its way.
Yeah.
Woo! Left 10 minutes later, double checked on the bird was coming.
You're great. So the honoring your parents thing, I tend to see all parent-child activity as the things we birth in our lives. Think about like your action to reaction in your being. How many things you do that have an effect, a cause and effect. I work out, that's the cause, and then what's the effect of that? So we like to say, well, it adds up to health. I'm like, yeah, but what today? Did that create greater joy in your life? Did that affect someone else? So there's this birthing process that we're all in at all times. We're always in a gestation period. Kabbalah looks at it like we are masculine and feminine, all of us, representing this kind of equilibrium of there's places where the only thing I can offer is the giving of my seed, and there's places that the only thing I can do is gestate and nurture and bring life in. And that's, you zoom out, that's pretty much what we're working with here. The times we get to give and the times we get to nurture and help something else grow. And in that sense, honoring your parents represents, it plays out in honoring your parents, but it's honoring you as somebody who brings life into this world. Honoring your own gestation period. In other words, health equates with patience. You need a certain amount of patience and space to be in the process of health and growth. So maybe, perhaps the Torah is saying that long life comes from honoring your parents is a philosophy of how it plays out in your own being. I'm a parent because I have things that have come from me. I have birthed things in this world. Whether it's work, whether it's friends, or whether it's family, whether it's actual children, I birthed things. And that's long life. Forget just those things are alive and you elongated life. You've actually have to learn to honor and have like a certain awe for what you're able to do. We live so much in the rat race of getting something done versus honoring what we actually birth in this world. This is where like we're ancestors in training type of vibes. You know, we're bringing life into this world. Where is the honor for that? Sometimes you meet someone, just go with that for a second. They brought something into this world, even if at the moment they're offending me. They're parents. They brought life in. That's a elongating life. So I was thinking about that today as like, what an interesting correlation to that. And especially we're in a generation where I know a lot of people, they can't even honor their parents. The relationship is tough. And it's not, and they're honoring in subtle ways by like not calling them names in their head or like finding good meeting points or things like that, where they passed away and it's hard to summon that like honor. I feel lost, I feel missing, like, so there's a certain awe necessary for this experience that the Torah is telling us, and that elongates your life. Feels natural, right? If my heart's lighter, if my body's lighter, if I'm in a state of balance, maybe I can't honor my parents, but like I can hold good space for what it means to be a parent and what it means to bring in life. I've changed the narrative. I've given myself like clean life, clean living, and that's important.
And giving to your parents also. Like as you were talking, honoring your parents even after they pass away. Like I know he's still living through. Whereas I had met friends who were like, I hated my mom when she was passed away. I was happy she was gone. She is really gone. Like no one knows about her anymore. No one's talking about her.
Wow.
So as you were talking, I'm like, oh yes, I was very lucky that my dad was who he was and he taught me love, he taught me generosity. He would have loved this gathering. He would have been very excited about the food that I hope will come soon. But like, he gave us so much joy and he taught us joy that I know my brothers who are in Israel are also having a party there, and some of his friends are having a party in Paris, and we're having a party in LA. He's living 3 lives at the same time. And so that also how maybe I'm giving him more years.
I think so. I think more than giving him more years, you're making his life alive. He's alive. He's living more life. And that's how you honor your own living more life. Mm-hmm. And Jewish people have done a decent job with that, with the parents and connection thing, to feel like the lives continue. And you know, I read a psalm for my age. I read a little Tehillim for my age, and we always read one age ahead. You know, like, because we're really not the age we are, we're in the next year already. And I was looking at Psalm 120, and the whole Psalm 120 is like how to figure out peace from war. Wow. And how every time I bring something out there, I feel like I'm at war.
Wow.
Like Chia Daber, I want to speak, Hey Mala Muhammad. They just want to argue with it. And that's harming the honor of the parent relationship, both in reality of parents and people and our own personal, like we're at war with our own production instead of being like at reverence for bringing life into the world. And unfortunately, sometimes it's easier when somebody passes to think about the life that was brought into the world because that's all that's left. That should start earlier, ideally, for us. Start seeing it in ourselves and in the people around us, to see the life we bring into the world, to really honor that deeply. Now, the sending the mother bird away, that's a little more trippy, because what we're talking about over here is like honoring life itself is not like we take from life. We just do. We take from life. We consume from outside of ourselves to live. People are in great shape. What's the footprint of that health that they have? What did it cost us as a community?
And actually you have ideology that say that. Like we are the worst thing that could happen to Earth. Earth would be better without us. Like the veganism who try to like, I'm vegan too, but like there's this idea that like by being on this planet, we are destroying it. And for me, it's hard to hear because we have the opposite concept, which is we here to fix the world. We hear like this is one of our duties as Jews is to fix the world, to be a partner with God. And so those two ideologies can really conflict. And as you say, like if we're healthy and we're damaging the world, are we really healthy?
Well, we have to reimagine our consumption. I don't subscribe to that we're destroying the world or fixing the world as much as like we're in a partnership, period. Like I don't need an ideology or political assignment to feel like I'm in partnership because I can't live on my own supply. I have to consume, I have to partner with the world. So to me, the idea that elongating life has to do with the sensitivity towards that you are taking.
But we have a lot of rules for taking. Even just the food.
Huge amount.
We're not eating everything. So somehow there's things that we're not supposed to touch or grab. There's the very first story of things we're not supposed to grab out of that supposedly tree.
Well, we're forgetful, and we need to work on that. There was this Hasidic master was going in a flux. He was like, I forgot God for a minute today. God's the greatest thing, and I forgot it. And his student says to him, you know, there's a rule in the Torah that if you're a farmer and you collect your crop and parts of it drop off on the floor, you forgot it, you're not allowed to go back and pick it up. You have to leave it. It's like part for those who are needy, who need to come get it, you have to leave it for them. But if you had a big bundle and it fell down, you're allowed to go back and pick it up. It's not considered forgetting. So he tells him, he says, you're the master. The little times you forgot, we picked that all up. Don't worry about it. We collected all those vibes. And the big things that you forgot, you didn't really forget. It's always yours to take with you. This idea of our consumption, like I think people don't take it serious enough because they're afraid that I don't even know where to begin. You just began. You just began. Just begin, like where do I begin in having soft consumption? And then do I have to go on diets? Do I have to change all my habits? What do I need to do? We have to first start with like the sensitivity and the consciousness of like our consumption is a real part of our being. It's not a necessary evil. It's part of how we connect to the world. And it's how we elongate our life. You can't live a long life if you don't consume. You don't sustain. So this idea of the Torah giving us these two long life recipes, one is honoring what you bring and then honoring how you consume, and those are recipes for long life. Those are also broad so that you don't need a guru and a teacher and a master to teach you everything. You can self-understand how to go about the Jewish way of living a longer life.
So if we double click on this is also one of the things that is annoying to me is that the Jewish people has always made its way through times. We didn't have to completely change, and somehow we were able to modernize our text and always be with our time. And right now when I'm thinking about consumption, what I'm eating, and I look at Pico Boulevard, I'm like, guys, we are gonna die! Like, look at this food! Don't you know? Like, Belize has healthy food and other part, and I'm like, I think that's hurting me. I'm like, I can't believe that the Jewish people, you go to the Jewish quarter, the Jewish neighborhood, and it's the most unhealthy food. Like, I'm sad for my people, and I'm so sad that we are not right now living with our time on that specific part, when we have so many rules around eating, and had not to hurt an animal, and yet are we hurting our bodies by what we're eating?
Well, we're missing kind of the knowledge of how to treat our bodies. Like if we were having a conversation of knowledge, it's like, all right, you learn that if you eat protein, your body is sustained, and if you eat carbohydrates, even though you have energy, the energy really only converts and metabolizes the next day, so you don't really get the energy you need today, and therefore you have these sugar, spikes, and you have to that's a whole different science. The mystics are like, just eat really happy. And convert the energy into joyful, nutritious value, and see how that happens. So I would say today kosher does not equate to healthy. And I think sometimes coming from outside or from a health perspective, you want to look into kosher and be like, what? I want it to be healthy. But the reality is that we're all living with the same consumption rules. today. Like being kosher is not hard in LA or New York or places like that. It's if you just go to those shops, everything you have. I mean, if you just go to the kosher grocery store called Trader Joe's, you pretty much like everything is kosher in the store, you know? So you have this like sense of the rules were never supposed to be automated.
Mm-hmm.
This is the general terms of, there is a personal obligation to at some point reach adulthood and interact with your consumption in a way that works. And when you look in Torah, that's why there's a lot of gray around what kosher is and what consumption is and what long life is. I don't think it's because they didn't know. I think it's because they know how individualized this process is. And how long did it take me to find my body? I mean, the last year I lost 75 pounds. What was I searching for? I was searching for something that was aligned with me. I had all the information, I'd been on all the diets, and just nothing until it was like, oh, you're really gonna have to learn about yourself. And if you think that being healthy is a good model for a spiritual leader and a rabbi and a guide, like, well, you're not going to find it without finding your own self. And oh, it turns out I have lots of human things that I need to work on, and there's no recipe to get past it. And if you want to get off the roller coaster and into yourself, authenticity is the only way. So this is the Torah's broad approach of like, you could be keeping kosher because it's easy, but that's not what keeping kosher is. Keeping kosher is that, but it's also I have an individual connection to everything I'm eating. I'm in the story of my consumption.
But you really pointed to the place of pain. Like at first I say I'm hurt to see that they're eating unhealthy, but I think as you were talking, I was like, oh no, what I'm hurt with is when we force eat or when we eat too much, we're not alive. We actually are trying to like binge watching Netflix or just overeating. It's actually because we don't want to be aware of what's happening. And as you were talking, you were like, actually, like when I remove the matter, I have a lot of humanness. I'm alive. I know finally. I think probably that's where I'm afraid of. I'm like, are we eating ourselves to death? Are we just trying to turn off the light? The Jewish people who are supposed to be the light and the brightest, are we turning off the light? Because the world is too much, and the world has been too much since October 7th.
Well, it says, Zakein zeh shekana chachma. Who is old? Those who have acquired wisdom. There's a certain acquisition of experience that plays into wisdom. It's not just knowledge and information. It's an experience-based accumulation of expansiveness that happens in the mind that is actually what old age is. You don't have to become old to be old age. Old is a badge of honor in Jewish tradition. It represents an ownership of experience. And I think what we're looking for as ancestors in training, healing, and health and long life is the ownership of the experience that we've had. And Jewish people do go through victimization processes that now it's our generation's obligation to learn how to own their experience that they're having. That's a very hard thing to do, to own the experience that we're having. But when you see that our ancient ancestors, and we're talking in clear terms that being old is the acquisition of experience and wisdom. And old represents not old in age, but old in full long days and like feeling that spirit with it. We're now having a different conversation about it. But I would like to mention some of the things, because people do, like, this is nice, but there are a lot of fears that people have and that get in the way of health. So that's where I'm going to go to next.
Okay, let's go there.
You ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. Before we go there, is there like any like major thing coming up for anybody over here? Is there like something like a question that feels burning at this point? Yeah.
So I'm trying to think like the definition of health, like what is health in Judaism, and then it occurred to me that the word for health, we all the same root as the word for creation. I'm trying to think of the relationship between health and creation. Like, is what it means to be healthy? Is it when you're creating? Does that mean that the sign of a healthy person, someone who's creating things? Is creation breed health? Is healthy breed
So
creation?
there's a prayer in the morning that's part of the morning prayers that I say as a meditation, and it goes like this. It goes, Elohai Neshama which essentially Elohai means God, but it's a specific name, represent the God of breath and soul. So the master of this experience of soul. Shenasata be, that I am in relationship with, that was literally poured into me, given to me. Tahorhi, that wellspring is pure. My life source is healthy. My life source is absolutely fluid. And what does health feel like? Nothing. Anyone knows what health feels like?
We know what it doesn't
Right?
feel like.
It doesn't feel like anything. Because when you feel something, it's like waking up. So like if it doesn't feel anything, that's health. So that's what pure or tahori means. It's like there's a wellspring of life that we're not tapped into because we're not looking for it. We're never like, you know what, today I'm healthy today. You know, so there's like, so this prayer is like asking us to like kind of have a conversation with this. Then it goes, Atabarasa, you created it. But what is creation anyways? Creation means something attached to meaning, to a mission, to a journey. All things exist, all energy exists. It's always there. It's infinite. So when something becomes finite, specific, created, it was given a mission to be. So the idea, and I love the parallel of briut to bria, to being healthy and creation, is to feel health, we have to add a value and a meaning towards it. It needs to become a meaningful part of what you're here to accomplish in this world. We see people without health accomplish incredible things. And none of us say, like, imagine they were healthy, they'd do more. And we go, oh, because they're missing something, so they overcompensate and they do it and it's so inspiring. No. You could do more if you were fully healthy, like a lot more. You just have to attach meaning to it. Talk about partner creation. So when I say that in the morning, I really try to break that down to like connect to my wellspring of what's happening in the morning. I'm like, here's an opportunity. Thank you. Yeah.
So when we were talking about Abraham and Sarah and how like they were able to achieve such health and wisdom back then, it brought to mind a stat that I really like, and I wanted to see to what extent you thought that was maybe relevant to their, their healthy way of living. So I know now we're living in an age where there's so much information everywhere, and there's a stat that we all consume the same information in one day that our like tribal ancestors did in an entire lifetime. And what that does to, regardless to your point of like eating healthy and if you're exercising, like that alone, like what that can do to your body and your nervous system, and the fact that evolution like moves so slow, and that doesn't necessarily keep, our brains aren't evolving in the way that time is and the information is. And so do you think that has some sort of like major impact on why maybe achieving health in this day and age might be a little bit trickier than it was back then?
We have the most incredible filtration system in our brains. It comes down to presence. I think about it a lot, especially in just like mystical language, this idea. Because I would sit as a kid and I'm like, I want to know all the mysticism. I would sit and see all the old mystics in the synagogue where I grew up, and I'm like, I want to know all of it. It's like thousands of books. I'm like, I'm never going to know it. It's too much. And then it's like, so you start reading, you start learning, and it's so much, and it's so much information, and so much information. But at a certain point, your brain is all padding the values you have. It's all going in to serve the opinion you have and the value you have. So the real information consumption is not, it doesn't seem to me real information consumption. It's more of distraction. Information consumption would mean that my values are changing. I have a new opinion. I'm curious. I'm trying new things. And I don't think there's a fear of that. I think that would help us live better lives and quality lives. I think the information coming in such a pace that it's a distraction from my own growth and feeling helpless, I feel a lot more aligned with what you're saying, like when it's that way. And that's where I look at Abraham and Sarah. Not that there was less information out there. I'm pretty sure whatever information was there, they were obsessed with, like we are with the maximum information. You come to the little town shtetl and tell them news for the next year. They're dissecting the news and they're going in hearsay like. So for me, it's less the amount of information and more about like how are we approaching. This is all approach based. Our ancestors had an approach to life, to information, to consumption, and it affected their whole life. Abraham and Sarah were models like it affects when we eat. We have a consumption pattern, and we say blessings of blessings mean to draw in, like where's the food from? What's my connection to it? Is this right for me? And eat it, and then afterwards, I'm grateful that there's a spark of infinity in that food that I share, and when we connect, like boom, we expand, and guess what? The food I don't need actually leaves and could go back into the earth, and like that. And so like they were understanding that, and we have like a blessing for everything. And a blessing is not I'm putting it out there dogma. A blessing is I'm bringing close the ideas of what's happening to me. So there's the bathroom blessing. Every time I go to the bathroom, I say blessing. Like the blessing is a trip. It's like if one of my small organs or veins did not work for a moment, I would be dead. Like, and it's like, what a blessing that my healing comes from being able to go through this pattern. And you're like, whoa, every single time. The Asher Yatzar is pretty magical. So I think like
that's one of our key.
Right? And people do look at Judaism, by the way, and say it's too much. The books are too much, the chants are too much, the prayers are too much, the learning's too much. It's too much information. I can't. It's like, hold up. It depends what your lens is. If your lens is, I'm here to like fill my days, maximize my being, see what's unique about my archetype, how I can actually be a seed in the ground, blossom, create fruit, feel that energy every day, live long days as we're talking about, like, I'm so glad that there's infinite information to parallel the limited brain I have of what I could bring in. But there's an art that our ancestors are trying to share with us, and we're trying to figure out so we can share with our life as it is. So I'm not as afraid of it, but I'm cognizant of it. I have children. I see the data coming through them. I see what's happening, and I'm like, maybe we could consume all the silly things quick and get back to the main course of like, what meaningful existence am I really a part of, and where do I find myself in that, and how do I learn to feel health, and how do I learn to feel long days, and how do I learn to like fill up my space, fill up my body from the inside out. And it doesn't matter how much information you have or how little you have, it's real effort. Because your weaknesses will show up to that process. And we're in a world that I would say what they may have not had as much as we have a lot of distractions. And we can use a lot of support in that. Communal activities, sitting together, Shabbat dinners, these are support parts of Judaism. Judaism to me needs a rebranding as instead of a religion, as a support system. That's really what it is. It's a support system so that you can have a calibrated life, that your calendar and your consumption is being tinkered with, so you could work with it.
And that leads us to the fear, because we're talking about like we have fear of owning our experience, we have fear of owning our existence, and that's part of the fear also. Like, are we ready for it? Are we ready to have a long day? And maybe not. Maybe because there's a lot of fear there.
The mystics split up human fears into three major categories. It's the fear of objectivity, my body being violated. It's a real fear. You know? There's fear of like me being murdered, dying. You know? That's a real fear. And there's a fear of going crazy. I can't handle my load. Those are like the three categories of fears in mysticism. I mean, I'm sure we can come up with infinite fears, but they kind of fit into like the you know, me being violated, my space, my body, me being killed, you know, and of course me losing it, me not being able to handle my load.
I feel I almost hear like emotional well-being, physical well-being, and mental well-being.
yeah, I think there's a lot to work with in those categories, and they actually call them the wolf, the lion, and the snake.
Which one is who?
The wolf is the
heart
is the
of it.
pillaging,
Okay.
is the pillaging, is the rape or the objectivity, like that. The lion is the murder.
Mm-hmm.
These are all, you know, on their worst archetypes, and the snake is the twisted my mind.
Wow.
And the anecdotes they give for those fears are very interesting. I found them very interesting because you can kind of subcategorize them on different levels. In the fear of, I hate to use the word rape, but of our space being violated, which they call the wolf one. So the wolf in Jewish tradition was Benjamin.
Yeah.
Benjamin was imperfect, and his job was to personify the wolf as like not the endless use of things, the endless consumption of things, but as in the ability to have like deep practice. The wolf is the morning and the evening too. The way to overcome those fears and to heal from the difficulties we've had. Recently, somebody said something to me very impactful. They said, children don't own their bodies. People just touch their hair and pinch their cheeks, and what do they learn? They learn that they're not in charge of their bodies. Oh my gosh, that's crazy. I changed all my practices now. I come into the house and I announce, does anyone want a hug? I used to walk over, hey, I was like, oh my God, you're right. Let's find a meeting point for this engagement. Like maybe up until 2 years old, they need your touching the whole time for sure, and peekaboo and grabbing and all that. But at some point, their awareness comes, you need to start modeling safe behavior, you know? And it's very interesting. A lot of my kids are like, no. And I'm like, I'm not offended. I'm like, wow, look at them owning their space. And it's a couple weeks later, and now it's another, they'll walk by and like, I'm up for a hug now. I'm like, oh, amazing, you know? So they don't ask me though if I want a hug, but they're ready. So there's this like, all the things going on around these subjects in the world aren't focused yet on like how to bring up people that own their space. So to squash those fears, the Bible talks about a gratitude practice of morning and night, because the wolf is, you know, howling at night and setting up shop in the morning. They're like, they have the ends of the day or where their active is, and in that activity, and it also connects that to the long distances, so to the legs. So that would mean like health practices of gratitude is like literally tapping into what our legs bring to our body. They bring a certain like accountability to our intimacy. Accountability to like, if you want to persevere, you can't just be intimate whenever you want. Like it has to be in this deep reciprocal relationship, in connection, in like for consent. There's a version of spirituality where the word prayer really just means consent to this experience happening to me. I pray in Judaism, what I'm essentially saying is I consent to the divine activity happening to me. I mean, so these are the healing modalities for that fear, sometimes very real fears, that we can heal ourselves through like, you know what is good exercise for that? Is like me really actually like doing exercises that give me gratitude. You know, like not exercise that are pumping muscle, get strong. Like it actually like getting into my body, filling my body so it can actually take the space for consent. What does that look like? That nourishing food. This is not a time to be super emaciated and skinny. This is a time to like fill your body, feel the health, feel that like satiation of beingness. So I thought that the antidote for like the fear of like violation of my body was just so natural, of like gratitude, morning and night practices. In Judaism, we say Modani in the morning, Shema at night. We do these things that are all about like the morning Modani is about tapping into gratitude creates a safe space for my ani. And at night, before we say the Shema, we let go of any perceived ills against us. So we give ourselves an opportunity to fill our own space. We don't let anyone in our space in the morning as we bring in the gratitude, and right when we go to bed, we go to sleep with like filling our space. It's like, wow, that's a pretty incredible thing. And they call it the incomplete work. Benjamin, the name Benjamin the wolf, he was incomplete in the sense of like, there was no glory for this. There was no like, you did it. You overcame your fear of being violated. But there is a fullness of being that you get to live with. You get to be with your whole existence. You get to tap into something that like was taken and to be brought back. And that was very emotional for me to read that today. And I was so happy I stumbled upon that.
I think obviously my mind went to our people who had been murdered, who had been raped and violated, and I'm thinking like, can they find the force? Can they find teaching from Benjamin, like what it is to re-tap into their aliveness after that?
Yeah. Like, yeah. Well, we can all model the best behavior we can. Maybe it's what it means for Jews to live a long life, to be in long days, is to like try to have the most opportunity we can to actually do that. Now the fear of murder or death, and that the lion fear is a heart fear. And the heart, of course, that's cardiovascular. It's actually a leaner diet. You know, the heart doesn't need a lot of other things. It needs a lot leaner, so it doesn't have any toxicity to deal with. Right? What is the heart? The whole body is like trying to protect the heart from any toxins getting in there so that it can keep doing its thing. So the fear of death has a lot to do with like feeling light and feeling like, and then how do you make the heart strong? Well, then you do muscle workouts. So there's like a certain, like that will help you just literally biologically with fear of death, with like getting strong, like beating up your heart, like that. And the fear of death when it comes to like mystical prayers and alignment with that has a lot to do with being able to like actually understand what it means to take life from yourself. We take life from ourselves. We don't intentionally live every day, and we leave gaps of time left to outside influences to decide what those gaps of time are. It's like, imagine we were like we forget about our heart, forget how it's beating for large amounts of time. We're so lucky that when we don't remember it, it's doing its job. What a beautiful, lucky thing to be able to do. And so the idea of like having to have a certain, connection to that. And they have this beautiful biblical story. Daniel is this prophet who's thrown in the lion's den, and he's not eaten. And if you back up in the story, he was not given any food to eat. They wanted to stuff him up with non-kosher food because they wanted him to be healthy. He was brilliant. They wanted him at the king's court, and he was only eating little fruits and vegetables and nuts. And the doctor said, if you don't keep him fat, they're going to kill us. The king will be like, you're not feeding him. We're going to kill you. And he's like, I'm fine. I know what I'm focused on. And I never understood that until I thought about that. They brought him up in like the fear of death. And then he goes to the lion's den, and the lion's like, left him fine, just like chilling. And what did he conquer in his fear of death there was that his body was a lightness of being. He found an equilibrium for his heart, to keep his heart rate in, to keep that. So like people are all like running and keeping their heart in and eating well, but what's it for is really beautiful. It's to share this like, I don't live in fear of death. We can't live a long life before fear of death. We cannot. So these fears are also holding us back, like the fear, like legitimate fears of death. People are under threat of death in a lot of parts of the world. People are in threat of rape. So, but we need to heal those fears. And the last fear is the fear of losing the mind. And for Jewish people, we should have lost our minds a long time ago. We really should have. We've been through some stuff. And the antidote for that is knowing that we have incredible amounts of ancestral wisdom flowing through us. we know so much more than we take credit for. How many people, I don't know anything about Judaism, and when you start talking to them, they know so much. They may not even know that it's Judaism, but like they know so much. And what's interesting for me is all of these ideas are middle axis, we call that. They're harmonious. We started off with that we're looking for a certain harmony in life. All these three things are our center column. The idea of having inner gnosis and wisdom, what we call das, because that's the things we could communicate. The center column to squash our fears from losing it. You may not know everything, but you know a lot more than you're giving yourself credit for. Fear of death, center column is the heart, is the beauty of it all. Seeing how things come together, seeing the connection of life and death. The greatest teacher to life is death. Not being afraid of it and understanding that we have the capacity to live in this like pulsating vibration as long as we need to. And then of course the even lower one in the fear of rape and like going down to our middle axis of intimacy and understanding that we have the capacity to fill ourselves and to take up our space with gratitude practices and the right health practices. So our ancestors did have a beautiful understanding of longevity. And it was this middle column force. And I would think that that's why a lot of our ancestors who went through the most crazy atrocities lived the most beautiful long lives. Because they held on to their identity in a way that brought them the harmony they were looking for. And our generation is now in search of that.
Yeah.
They're not just in search of longevity, they're in search of the longevity of what they want to be about. They don't want to hide and run away from what's happening, but they want to live. So these are some of the things that are alive in me that I got to share with you.
And maybe that leads us to the third part, which is this emergence of Jewish healers. So, because you said now there's something that we feel in there. There's maybe we are going back to our roots, how our ancestors used to know those things and we lost them. And when I'm seeing the world that is all into healing and yoga is happening, I'm seeing it into our own people also. There are more people who are more Jewish people who their parents used to be the conventional doctors and they are the new wave doctors, but they're trying to like look after the mind, the soul, the body, the mind, not just what the body can be fixed with.
So we're doing it all, right? One of the reasons we feel aligned is I'm doing it all. I'm doing my prayers, I'm doing my kosher, I'm doing my yoga, I'm doing my gratitude. I want to do it all. I want to live what I'm talking about. Not just to role model it or to say this is what it is. Like I really want to see this play out in my life in a way that I feel the health, I feel like I can overcome the challenges and the obstacles that come my way. And I feel like I want to be able to share that with people as well. And what an opportunity to like look at your father's passing with a new heart and a new way to share in the community and to open up a new topic for people to bring forward. Like that's modeling the behavior that we're talking about. So deep gratitude for you and for bringing the conversation forward.
We have more questions.
Yeah, we do a few questions.
I can ask a question. I have. You said that it's like within our history and like our understanding that we can be regenerative and live forever, but obviously we don't. And I'm sure there's lots of good reasons why you'd say that is. But in your, I'd love to hear you answer or speak to why like we have lost. We don't have. I mean, whether it's our own doing or not, no one currently is. So like, why has that mechanism changed, and what have we gained from that change in any way?
We need to also like forgive. Like we're talking about what has changed, what hasn't changed, but like we also we're at a point where we're gonna have to forgive ourselves and forgive others very deeply in this process to stay on track. There's the word for forgiveness is mechila. Okay, like that. And if we don't find a way to forgive ourselves of what we haven't been doing right, the same words from mechila for forgiveness are also chola, sickness.
Wow.
like a big part of the unhealth that we experience comes from the inability to have forgiveness and to move forward. It's a big trip that sickness and forgiveness are the same etymological word. And so is the word to be a chayal, a soldier, like to have a direction and to go it. So is it to be an eshet chayil, someone, a feminine valor. They're all connected to this idea of like, we have to have beautiful elasticity for this to work. Because otherwise, things don't change. They just stay the same. No matter how many diets you go on and no matter how many articles you read, it's just the same. So there has to be a form of, from going from chola to mechila to chayal to eshet chayil, to have a certain like connection to this process on this path.
If I can scratch a little bit, I think what I keep from you is that I think my comment was like, show me the yoga in the Torah, and you didn't show me the yoga. You showed me you showed me the Shema. You showed me the Modéani, and I was like, of course. Like, why am I trying to replicate what's out there? We have our own keys, and we know those keys work. I'm wondering how you see many members of the more religious community who are also coming to you and asking for healing. How do you see their process? Because they're more rooted in our Jewish codes and rituals, and yet they are so suffering.
Well, we have partnership with creation we spoke about, and partnership automatically with consumption. And I don't think it's unknown that like the plants have come to partner with us for healing in the last few years in a very wide scale. And I found it to be a very natural time for us to be able to partner with the plants. I saw ancestral Jews have deep connection to plants. All of our holidays had a plant element. We have many, many blessings on the plants. We went to war holding palm branches. I mean, like, what were you thinking? You know what I mean? Like,
excuse me, sir, are you Jewish? Would you like to shake the lulav?
So partnering with the plants is such a big part of it. You guys all got your food. Do you want to? We're in live talk. You want to integrate some of the food with some of the blessings?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. So you guys, you can go with it. I'm gonna choose on the plate the most.
Well, I think you need a plate.
Yes.
Okay.
Bring us a plate.
You want a plate, Nellie?
Yes, bring us a plate.
It's like it's really
Let's begin with an olive over here. We're gonna begin with an olive and make a blessing on the olive. So the blessing on the olive goes like this. I'm gonna first like say out the words and what they mean, and then we'll say it together. So when we say a blessing, you may have heard those words, Baruch atah Adonai, right? Let's at least bring that meaning to present. Baruch means to draw in. A blessing means, blessed means to like draw in the reality that I'm having right now. And atah is you. What does it mean to draw in you? Every word is a name. Because a name represents relationships. So every name represents what relationship am I in? What am I connecting with? So really every word is a name, is a relationship. So if I say you instead of your name, either I don't know you, or I know you really well. You is a deep, deep word. So when we go Baruch Atah, it's like, I don't know what God is. Or it's like, wow, I connect to God in my own way, and it's beautiful. So when we start every blessing, Baruch Atah Adonai. I draw in you from the infinite. It's beyond me to draw in anyways. Believer, not believer, who are we to draw in the infinite? We're limited containers. But Baruch Atah Adonai, I bring focus that there's a spark of the infinite that is Eloheinu, that is in nature, that is actually pulsating in the food I eat. And Melech, it creates sovereignty. It creates a deep sense of dignity and individuality within this partnership that's happening. Ha'olam, within the eternal concealment, within things that are beyond, hard to see. So like I'm trying to like focus in my lens. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam is always I'm focusing in my lens. What's happening? Borei, means I create meaning to the partnership, creation, health. Peri, the fruit, meaning I'm not taking from the essence, from the roots and ruining its life. I'm taking from the fruit, its offering. Ha'adama, of the earth. Ha'adama means that is a mirror to something larger than itself. The earth is a mirror to the container of life, to the womb. So we'll make that blessing here on the olive. Baruch atah Adonai. Eloheinu melech haolam, boreinu
Amen.
Hey, I meant on the potatoes. We have a lot of Adam on our plate. That also goes for the salad over here as well.
After all that, the married Hadama.
That's what I was feeling,
You
man.
can make a hadama because it really comes from the ground. The tree comes from the ground.
Or you just say shahako on everything.
Wow.
Can I
Now
ask
you
another
tell me I'm
question?
sitting here in the Sanhedrin over here. What's going on? I thought we were just having lunch.
Is it cool if I ask another question?
Yeah.
I would love to pick your brain. I loved all of the ways that you brought down these concepts and like very physical, practical, like what does that really look like in this day and age and space of our present moment. I love the whole focus on life into the day. And you had mentioned also like showing up authentically in the day, and I would love if you could riff a little bit more on that, and if you have any like practical, like how do we show up authentically and how can we help others show up authentically?
Beautiful.
I think healing our fears will help us with that. I had a fear to translate the blessing in a language that would work for me. I come from a very religious place. If I don't translate it with the words they gave me, maybe I'm running from the tradition. But yet it wasn't authentic to me. Judaism wasn't authentic to me. It was given to me beautifully, and it was loving, and it was all-encompassing, and a little much, but it wasn't mine. It was, I was carrying the torch forward. And at a certain point, I just couldn't carry it. I have a lot of other things to carry. I have my wife and kids and my responsibilities and things that I'm like, you're making me carry everything at all times, and just like I can't do it. So you have to give yourself permission to experience and to not get it perfect. The beauty of authenticity is if you mean to do something authentically, you will get to the right place. The Torah was given, we had the portion a couple of weeks ago, it's called the portion of Jethro. Jethro was Moses' father-in-law. And the classical question is, they could have also chosen from that word the word Moses and called it the portion of Moses. After all, he brought the Torah to the people. He was the central figure. Why are you calling it after this guy? Do you know who that guy was? He was an idol worshiper. They sacrificed children at that time, human beings. They did some really wild stuff at that time. Idol worship then was not like, I have an altar. You know what I mean? That's cool. It was something else entirely. How could we name the portion of getting the Torah after that guy? And the mystics say something radical. They're like, everything he did it authentically. And that led him eventually to saying, this is not the real thing. Until he showed up at Sinai and said, this is the real thing for me. Authenticity is a very difficult path because it's not always matching up with our experiences that we've acquired. But if we learn to heal some of our fears around that and learn to access some of our inner voice, the path is nothing short of a miracle. Nothing short.
Beautiful.
Good work.
Thank you.
Thank you, Niels.
Thank